Good afternoon. My name is Becky. I'm part of the team here at St. James in the city. I'm one of the school missional chaplains. And it's so good now that Lydia has joined the team. To be part of a school's team again is just so exciting. God is surely on the move. And then Ethan is starting tomorrow, and he's doing a couple of days of my maternity cover. So the team is expanding even before I go off. So that's just really exciting. We work across 3 local high schools, bridging that gap between a school and church. And it's just honestly so exciting. I love what I do, and I love seeing God move in that, in his faithfulness, in his hope, and in his love. And that's what our kind of sermon series is looking at. We're in the 4th week now of faith, hope, and love. What an exciting sort of thing. And the three kind of pillars that we need in our Christian walk. Matt kind of shared last week, he kind of opened up this subject, and it's kind of like a 2-parter. As we were kind of talking about it, Matt and I, in the week, he kind of kicked it off, and I'm sort of finishing it off here. He said that we are justified through grace of God. Matt kind of explored what it looks like to be individually justified, and that was in Romans chapter 3. And in Romans chapter 4, it reminds us that we are justified, but we're justified as a covenant, as a family. We're in this justification together. Now, I love journeying with people together. It's better than doing it on our own. We're all in the same family, who share the same faith, who share the same hope, and share the same love. And when Paul starts to mention in this passage about Abraham and his family, I can't help but think of this song. Now, Matt, have you got the song ready? Sure you all remember this. Yeah, come on, there's some dancing at the back. Look at this, look at our leaders. Okay, we'll leave it there. Amazing. Family worship next week, yeah? If nothing else from today's preach, you'll have that stuck in your head, maybe for the rest of the day or even the rest of the week, a very catchy song. So being part of a family, I think, is a really great thing. And each family has a different makeup, taking up different shapes, different sizes. We all do things differently. We have different cultures that are set. And sometimes, if we're related, we kind of look similar as well. And that kind of reminds me of the family I grew up with, my mum and my dad and my 2 younger sisters. Now, we all have my mum's eyes and my mum's blue eyes, and we all have my dad's nose. And when Matt and I have been going to the scans for our little baby, we've seen that my nose is certainly being passed down into our family. But they've also been pouting a lot as well, so I'm not sure where that bit comes from. I'm not taking credit for the little pouts. My family also, we just look alike, but we're also quite similar in the way that we are. Our personalities, we're quite creative, we're quite expressive people in our characters. We're the family that when we have on Christmas Day, we watch each individual person open their presents. And my mom even makes up this thing where you have to guess what's inside before you can open it. And when Matt joined our family, it was something he wasn't very good at, and still is not very good at to this day. We have family values, characteristics, genetical things that make us have things in common. And if we look back to Genesis 12, Abraham is called by God. He's given a promise that his family will be more than the stars in the sky and more than the sands on the shore. But he says, God, how can this be? Look at me and my wife. We are too old to do this. But as you have said it, God, I believe and I trust you for this promise. If anyone can make it happen, God, it is you. And Abraham trusts in God. And that's the point. He trusts in God, and he has this ridiculous faith. So when we talk about faith, hope, and love, I think of Abraham's faith as being absolutely ridiculous, absolutely impossible. Absolutely impossible for him and Sarah to have a child. Yet he goes, God, if you say it, I'll believe it. And through this, he was made right with God. He trusts in God, and through that, God makes him right and has a righteousness there. Abraham was brought into this covenant family through faith, not by something he'd done. You looked at his works, and he didn't have, at that point, much to say about himself. In society, having a child, particularly a son, would have been a huge thing, and Abraham didn't have it. But what he boasted in was he boasted in the Lord. Abraham is the beginning of this covenant family, which to all believers now belong, you and me. And we're called to be part of a new family. And when I got married to Matt, it was being part of that new family. And we looked at ourselves together, establishing things for our family together, what our values were going to be, what our cultures were going to be, what the things we were going to do and not do. Kind of taking the best from the Johnson family and the Courtney family and making something of our own. And when we were talking about this in the week, when we went on honeymoon, we went abroad to Spain, and Matt's grandparents owned a few properties there. And they left us a few little bits, some kind of like basics, some bread, some butter, some milk and things lying around. And in the week, Matt was kind of making the sandwiches. And so I noticed there was just, I find really odd, so sorry if you do this. But you know when you've got like the butter lid, and then you've got that foil, and there's, most people, I think, throw that away. But Matt wasn't throwing it away. He was rolling it over, doing the bread, then rolling it back and flattening it down. So I was just like, okay, this must be what his family do. I'll try and be part of this as well. Maybe this is the culture that we're going to have with how we deal with our butter. So that was what we did. So when we got back home, I was like, okay, well, when we get our butter, so I carried on doing the same, and then Matt would do the same, and that carried on for a little while. And one day Matt said to me, why do you always keep the foil back over the butter? And I was like, what? I do that because you do that? He went, no, I do that because you do that. And feeling a little bit confused, I reminded him of Spain and the foil and watching him do that. And he said, oh, I only did that because it was me nan's butter, and that's what she did. And I was trying to be respectful of me nan. And I was like, oh, okay. And thankfully, Abraham doesn't have to live by rules of butter, of whether you're a foil person or not. He doesn't have to live by the rules of being a Jew. He doesn't have to live by the rules of being circumcised to be justified by God. A sinner saved by grace. Or as Tim said this morning, a saint who sins. We are welcomed in to be part of this family. And having this membership is on the basis of our faith, hope, and love. And I kind of get a bit intimidated, I'm going to be honest, when Paul is talking about Abraham here and setting him up to be this perfect example of this faithful man and doing this and being a righteous man and being a hero of the faith. I start to feel quite intimidated because I don't match up. He's this good example there on offer in the New Testament. We've been, from further on at the very beginning of Genesis, and I'm thinking, God, I don't match up to this. I'm not as faithful as Abraham. And then I think about Genesis, and I reread over it, and I see that his faith does dwindle. He misplaces his faith and takes God's promise of this child into his own hands. Now, Abraham would have hated the song, wait on the Lord, because he's like, I've waited, and I've asked, yet I've not yet received. Don't tell me to wait. As months and years go by, I'm only getting older, and this promise is only becoming more impossible. He says, I'm going to do it the Abraham way. I'm going to go and be with Hagar. And through that, I'm going to have a son. And Jerome said to me before, it's so sad. But I don't feel sad. I feel a sigh of relief. I feel like, oh, phew. Someone else is sometimes faithless like I am. Because I too try and put my faith in Jesus. I try and put my faith in his promises, in this covenant family that I am a part of. But I have doubts and I have fears, and sometimes I choose those over this DNA, this new family that I've been called into. The kind of, like the sinful self, my flesh, and this new family that I've been brought into, of this faith, hope, and love, rubs and grinds against each other, and they're opposites, and they are both trying to win. Because when we're brought into this family, this covenant, our DNA is changed. Our identity becomes that we are forgiven. Our identity becomes that we are hopeful, loving, and faithful. But Abraham fell short of that. I fall short of that. Sometimes shorter than short of that. And we see this with Abraham too, who started this covenant family. Someone is described as the heroes of the faith. Someone that is used as this great example here in Romans chapter 4. Also has fallen short. Also has said, I felt hopeless. I felt faithless. I felt like I have no love. God, I can't do this. Will you come through for me? And when I was chatting to Matt in the week, we were looking at actually when we know that we are forgiven, it's a little bit easier to live out this hope-filled life, to live out this faithful life, to live out this life of love. And I just kind of felt like, I know I've needed to hear it in the week as well, that some of us just need to hear that we are forgiven today, that we are forgiven and justified freely. Forgiven through the death and the resurrection of our Savior, Jesus. To live in that forgiveness, to know that we are forgiven and move out from that space. So hear today that you are forgiven and you are set free. You're a saint who sins, not a sinner who saints. Because when we know that we're forgiven by God, it changes us. It's that identity thing again. We can be hope-filled. We can be faithful. We can be loving. For those who put your hand up before, who said they've done the Alpha course and really also really enjoyed it, when there is that video of why did Jesus die? Whether you've seen that video for the first time or you've seen it loads of different times, because of us, to forgive us just hits you hard. Because you say, God, I've fallen short. And you've seen the things that I've done. You've read my mind. You know my thoughts. But before you, I can stand in that. But you see me as forgiven. You set me free. And what a gift that is of God's grace as he looks upon us. I can't help but think of Zacchaeus when Jesus has called him down from the tree. And people are saying, Jesus, do you not know who this guy is? Do you not know that he's a sinner? Surely you wouldn't be choosing his house to go for tea. But Jesus is like, I've forgiven him. He's justified. He's hope-filled. And he'll be faithful. Let us not be like the Pharisees who judge those who maybe don't have it quite like we do. You see, the gift of forgiveness is free for each one of us. Sorry. So come come today and just receive, receive that prayer. Come and be prayed for and be set free. When I think about being hope-filled, I think when we're in a new year and we think about the hopes that we have, we think about the things that we want to see, that we want to do, the plans that we want to achieve and put in place, things that we want to see in fruition. It's easier maybe to feel hope-filled at the start of the year. But yesterday, I didn't feel that hope-filled. When I should have been writing my preach, I was actually scrolling on social media, which then led me onto an article that was quite difficult and quite challenging and kind of spoke into some of my fears that I've been having. And actually, this video really floored me. It left me feeling pretty hopeless. And I moved my hope from being in God to being in this article that I'd seen and this video that I'd watched. I felt so hopeless. And then I was like, how am I going to stand there in front of everybody tomorrow? I had to sit and say, God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I've just watched. I'm sorry where I've realigned myself in the wrong way. I'm sorry that I've let it derail my hope. I was honest with him about my fears and my struggles. And I said, God, help me to be back in line with you, to hope against hope. You know, we are called to be faithful. And Abraham is recognized, as I said earlier, as having a ridiculous faith. Absolutely bonkers, mad faith that he believed in God. That God would do the absolute impossible for him and for the many nations to come. He repented and went back to God when he messed up. He trusted God that he would give him this child far beyond what was possible for him and Sarah to do at their age. He couldn't do this in his own strength, but needed Jesus. I just find that so refreshing when he comes back to God, realigns himself and is in God's grace. I think, yeah, Abraham, I identify with you there. And we can go on together. Because last year I had a really quite difficult year where I just kind of felt left, feeling a bit faithless. And we were on our way to Focus. And admittedly, in the week, I was not feeling the yay to go. I wasn't sure what God was going to do. I'd had a lot of unanswered prayers. Things just kind of happened to family members, friends. And I was like, God, I'm kind of fearful to pray because things just aren't going right. My faith had been shaken. I felt like I'd been washed up on the seashore. And I was wanting to trust in God, but had a real fear of surrendering over to him again. I knew that hindsight had told me that God was at work and that time and time again I'd seen him be faithful. I've seen him show up and move. But at this time I'd had that faith shaken and thing that I was like, God, I don't know. I want to go again, but I don't know whether I can. And then the very first evening in the youth session, there was a song that said, open up the windows and let the light in. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to make that the line for my week. I stood there behind our young people, and I prayed with the little faith that I had. I said, open up the windows and let the light in, God, to where there is darkness. Let the light in of where there is such a need for you to be. And I also prayed for myself. I said, let me have faith. Let me have that light that I need to go again. I chose to serve on team. I was there choosing to trust God. I was just giving the rest over to him. I was like, God, there's not really a lot of me this week, but what I give to you. and I'll go with whatever you choose. And we were probably like 3 nights in, and I was not on duty one of the evenings, and the WhatsApp chat of all the leaders were going and going and going. And I was like, you know what, I'm just going to pray. I'm just going to pray. Those guys are serving so hard. I've got this evening off, and I'm just going to pray and have faith that God's going to do something tonight. And it was my kind of role to kind of go and pick the young people up from the venue, and there was like a bench outside. And I just kind of sat on the bench, and Matty's kind of been there, and he came over, and he's like, Beck, you won't believe the stuff that God has done. And I was like, okay, yeah, go on. Tell me what he's done. And he's like, they're encountering God. They're worshiping. Some of them are becoming Christians. Beck, you've got to come and see it for yourself. And I went in, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. These young people that had kind of, queried their faith or kind of, made things difficult for us in the week were there fully into it, fully engaged, crying, going through loads of different emotions, totally in it for God. And I came out the venue and I sat on the bench. And then as I sat down, a friend messaged me and said something that amazing had happened. They'd had this breakthrough, and I've been praying, and sometimes I've just been saying that their family's name because I didn't have the words to say. And in that moment, I cried. I cried and I cried and I cried at the wonder of what God had done. But also, I was like, God, my lack of faith, all what you've done with my lack of faith. God, I am sorry for my lack of faith. We are loved by God. He promises that he will never leave us. He has a reckless love for each one of us that breaks down walls, that tears down lies, and changes us. And when we grasp this hope, we want to share it with others. We become more loving. We want to help those around us. We want to change our environment for the better. So I kind of wanted to ask a few little questions, but also wanted to give a little alpha plug. It's best to do this journey together. As Jerome said, we all have questions about our faith, no matter where we're up to. And we can be part of this team, whether we're coming and just being part of it, whether we're bringing a friend, whether we're serving in the kitchen, whether we're leading with Jerome at the front. It says on the front, you are all invited. This is what this is talking about. You are all invited. You are all justified. You can all be hope-filled. You can all be loving. You can all be faithful. You are invited. You are invited. And when we know that, we can't help but want to share it with other people. And Alpha is a great way to do that, to say, come on board, come and journey with me. Come and answer and wrestle with these things of faith. Wrestle with this hopelessness that we may feel. Wrestle with this lack of love in our world. You are invited. I'm going to invite the band back up for us now, if that's okay. Thanks, guys. So what does it look like? What does it look like to be forgiven? To really know that you're forgiven, to say, you know what, God, you see me. You see all the things that I've done. You know the things that I've said. You see the thoughts in my head. Yet you've called me a saint. I'm no longer a sinner, but I am justified through you. What does it look like to be hope-filled? To hope in God, hope against hope. What does it look like to be faithful? It says, faith as small as a mustard seed can move mountains by the power of God. Through those stories there that I've shared, I felt like my faith was smaller than a mustard seed and all that God did. Because it's not by our own works, but by God's. It's not anything that we've done, it's by his grace. It's him that we can boast in. What does it look like to know that we are loved by God? To know that his love for us is reckless, that tear down any wall or lie that we believe, that doesn't want to leave us as that he finds us. As when he sees Abraham, he doesn't leave him as he found him. He brought him into this family, set him apart, called him, and gave him promises over his life. So as the band sort of play, I kind of wanted to leave you with a few of these questions to kind of answer. Maybe you want to kind of write them down. Maybe you just kind of want to think over them. Maybe you want to kind of speak to someone close to you. So we share Abraham's ridiculous faith. Okay, that's what we're part of. We share the ridiculous faith that Abraham has, hoping against hope. What can that look like for us? To have that ridiculous faith. When God says something and you say, yeah, I'm fully in. If you say it, God, it'll happen. I'm going to hope against hope. Guys, do we look to God and expect the impossible things to come to pass? Even if we do have to wait on God. Are we expecting the impossible? And what does that look like in our lives? What does that look like in our workplaces, in our universities? And how can we live as this family, invited, forgiven, faithful, loved, hope-filled? How can we share this faith together? What does St. James in the City and St. Mary's look like together as a family if we're hope-filled, if we're faithful, if we're loving? So what we're just going to do now is we're going to leave a little bit of a space for you and God to kind of have a little conversation together, answer some of those questions. What does it look like to have ridiculous faith? Am I expecting the impossible from God? What does this family look like when we share that hope, love, and faith? There's going to be a prayer team at the side as well. If you say, you know what, I'm feeling pretty faithless, I'm feeling pretty hopeless, I need to know and feel that afresh again, that I am forgiven, that I am set free. There's going to be space at the side with Jerome and a bit of a team. Do come and receive prayer or speak to someone near you. Get them to pray for you. Don't leave this place as you started.